Vasishta continued, I shall now describe the tree known as samadhana, equanimity, which grows on the forest known as the heart of the wise. There are times when there's debate about the nature of enlightenment, whether it's an instantaneous thing or whether it's something which is arrived at through long practice which can extend over countless lifetimes. Both points of view have got some truth to them. Enlightenment is instantaneous. In fact, I'm sure there's a line of thought which could be developed which tells us that enlightenment is stumbled upon several times a day by most of us. But we don't realise what it is, and even if you do realise what it is, there might be an initial feeling of bliss, of joy. But then you have to keep coming back to it, and this is where the work is. You have to keep coming back to it. The work is not in looking for enlightenment. The work is in coming back to it. So this is the difference between the seeker and the practitioner. The seeker is one that hasn't recognized enlightenment, hasn't found it, and might be trying all sorts of techniques to find it. Well, this is a waste of time completely. Although some people might need to waste a lot of time before finding it, before stumbling upon it. The practitioner is one that has found it and has to keep coming back to it. And this is where effort is required. A tremendous effort, a tremendously subtle effort. Because sometimes I suspect that what a lot of people are coming back to is a memory of it. They have a memory of their enlightenment, and they have a memory of the feeling that engendered, the bliss, the blissful feeling perhaps. And what they're doing is they're actually going back to the emotional response. And so you get a lot of gurus, a lot of teachers who they don't come across as quite genuine, even though there's something about them which indicates they are genuine. There seems to be a lot of rather suspect emotions and performances. And I think this is because they are relating back to the feeling that they had when they first stumbled upon enlightenment. But the enlightenment itself is a memory. That's what they're relating to. They're not coming back to the moment. And this is the trickiness, this is where the effort comes in. They're not coming back to that original enlightenment. This is the analogy of the manna which God gave the Israelites in the wilderness. It was Goldsmith that came up with this one, or at least I read it in one of Goldsmith's books. The manna is spiritual realization. It's awareness, it's enlightenment. Now the point about the manna which God fed the Israelites is that they weren't supposed to store it up. They ate what they required and forgot about what wasn't required. And God would give them fresh manna the next day. The manna always has to be fresh. The manna is the bread. Manna is bread, an unleavened bread. It's the straight stuff. So this is like the enlightenment practice. We must be quite vigilant and brutally honest. Are we coming back to the enlightenment, or are we coming back to the memory of the enlightenment and the emotions which arose upon the initial stumbling upon enlightenment? So this chapter then is about this practice, enlightenment practice of coming back to enlightenment. And it's really written from the point of view of the yogic practices. But there's all sorts of practices we can do depending on our circumstances. And one is that brutal honesty which I suggested. We have to keep pushing back the rushes and the weeds which suddenly sprout up, and keep coming back to the original nature. So it's the tree known as samadhana, which grows in the forest, known as the heart of the wise. Samadhana is equanimity, and equanimity is not getting caught up in our notions. It's realizing the notional nature of everything that up to this point we've considered as reality. And once we realize the notional nature, we come back to the attention which is inquiring. And that's what we rest in. The nature of attention, and it's not getting caught up in things, is equanimity. And we can touch that directly. Its seed is a turning away from the world. The world is in quotes here because when we talk about the world, we must be careful not to give it any reality. Whether this is caused naturally or otherwise by the experience of sorrow. Mind is a field. It is ploughed by right action. It is watered day and night by right feeling. It is nourished by the practice of pranayama. So we've got right action, right feeling, a practice of pranayama. So you can work on your mind, you can work on your body. You can follow the Buddha's eightfold or tenfold path. On this field known as the mind, the seed known as samadhi falls of its own accord when one is alone in the forest known as wisdom. Samadhi here is described as turning away from the world. Now we're not turning away from the world as such, we're turning away from all our notions about the world. We're not sitting in some kind of aloof meditation. We're engaging, but we're realizing the nature of the game. The wise man should endeavour constantly to keep this seed of meditation watered and nourished by intelligent methods. In other words, methods which you know work, not methods based on hope or future expectation. For me, the method is the Yoga Vasishta. It's a wonderfully long text. It's a constant reminder to me that to where I could and should be. This is why I'm doing these videos. So we keep practicing enlightenment and we use whichever methods work. And if pranayama works for you, that's fine.